All right, welcome to the Highly Motivated Podcast. Today will be talking about the motivation with anxiety, as there has been a lot of anxiety in the air with the elections in the US. And we will also be talking about staying motivated while sad or depressed or be just down in the dumps. The next two things we'll be talking about that go together will also be humility and kindness, as those both are good aspects to have on the road to success, and we will definitely be using those in our podcast a lot because we like to be kind, we like to be humble, we just all together we like to be good people, especially with motivation. We want to motivate a lot of people with humility, kindness. We just want to boost people up that are sad, that have low motivation or have struggled getting motivated, and especially the anxious people who who are less motivated than normal or just are struggling to get motivated again and again because they have anxiety. So let's get on with the episode of today's highly motivated motivation. All right, with that segment of a little bit of Selena Quintanilla, because she's an idol, she's a queen. After that, now we will get on with the first aspect of the podcast for today, which is motivation with anxiety. Yes, I realize this episode is going up after elections have been counted and votes have been finalized, but there's still anxiety. There's always going to be anxiety. So I want to talk about that for a little bit, because with anxiety comes a lack of motivation, and with a lack of motivation there's a lack of desire to do things. So with anxiety, I've seen a lot of people just stop working, just go down and start being less motivated. With anxiety, I see them changing their goals, changing their plans to get to the goals because they're scared. And you should be scared of your goals because they should be high and difficult to reach, but you should be the one to reach your goal. So you should have a little bit of fear of your own goal, because they should be so big and high that you can't reach them. And I added that Selena part just to clear the air, just to add a nice fun tune. So because she gives me a lot of motivation, as Como la Flor is in Spanish, it means the flower. La Flor means the flower. Como la Flor combined. Let me just double check myself. Hold up. Como la Flor is like the flower. So it's like the flower. You bloom into it. You bloom into your success. With anxiety, you have to bloom out. You have to bloom. You have to bloom out of your fear, out of your anxiety, in order to fully succeed. You're allowed to have that aspect of fear and anxiety, because there's always going to be that aspect. You're always going to have that aspect of anxiety before you do anything, whether that be an interview, whether that be a concert, whether that be a game, whether that be a TV show, whether that be a recording, whether that be a podcast, whether that be a speech, whether that be a movie, or audition, or a test, you're always going to have anxiety. But you have to remember your goal. You have to remember what the path. Because, like, with the test anxiety, like I said, like, before a test, you're going to have anxiety. So you're going to be, like, you're going to have that anxiety of if you're going to do well or not. So you just have to make sure you don't stress over it. Don't worry too much about it. Yes, you're gonna have that worry aspect, and you're allowed to have that worry feel. Don't worry. Like, I'm saying don't worry a lot because it's a test. If you studied, or even sometimes if you didn't study, if you remember the lessons, and if you remember the overall topic and subject, you should be able to get through it, and you most likely will be able to pass because it is a test. You've been working on it the entire time, especially with the homework and with the in-class work and all that. You've just been working on it. You've been working up to a test. That's all the classwork and homework does. It prepares you for the test. Excuse me. And so you just have to make sure you remember that it's a test. You will do great. It's because it's just another step to your road to success. It's just a speed bump on your road to success, and there's going to be plenty of speed bumps. Yes, they will be spaced out. There will be plenty of speed bumps on this road to success. There will be many struggles and hardships, and you just have to make sure you push past them, because without pushing past them, you won't get to that succeeding point, and you will just push yourself too much, and you don't want to do that. Alright, with that little segment of music, we are now on to staying motivated while being sad. So, me personally, I've gotten sad. I've gotten spikes of like a depressed spike, and I know plenty of my friends who have depression, who struggle with being motivated. So, with that said, I'm going to talk about staying motivated while still being sad, which is very difficult for a lot of people to do. I realize, because I've seen it, I've felt it, I've struggled with it sometimes, which is why I'm making this podcast, because I know that it's difficult for people to get motivated. And this podcast is for those who struggle with staying motivated, and this podcast is also for those who would like to see motivation from a different perspective. But this segment is about staying motivated while being sad, which I've seen my friends struggle with, because I've seen some that have depression. Staying motivated while being sad. I personally, I go out, I clear my head sometimes, but I also like to listen to music. Like, I listen to a lot of music, and I actually try to search for motivational music, motivational speeches, like those types of things. But you don't have to do what I do, because you should be your own person. So being sad but trying to be motivated. So what you could do you could easily just you could search up motivational quotes. You can just clear your head, but ultimately just think about the goal. Think about your goal. Remember that you being sad is just a small hiccup in your plan to reach your goal. You being sad, you being depressed is just a small hiccup in your goal. So, being sad, you just have to get over it. This is not me saying stop being sad or anything. You get through your sadness. Just try an attempt to get through your sadness. Yes, me saying get over it was not the best wording, but what I meant in saying it was more so that you should try to push through it. Don't just give up on everything you work to. You should try to get through your sadness, try to get past it, because you being sad is only a hiccup in your plans. It's not a determining factor. You being sad should not determine you giving up. You being sad is just a little hiccup that everybody gets, but you've gotten worse. Yes, and I'm not gonna say that everybody gets worse sadnesses, but other people have gotten worse. You may, in your opinion, have gotten worse than other people. So just try to get past your sadness. Whatever you're being sad about, you either address it one-on-one or address it with somebody you trust, like either a therapist or a good friend, or like even your parents. But don't go towards the sadness all the time. You definitely can go to the sadness. You can obviously go towards the sadness and just confront it in general, but you should definitely just try to push past it. Remember your goals, remember your plans. Remember that a sadness is just a hiccup. It's only a small little hiccup in your plan. You should never deter or give up on your plan just because of a little sadness or like mental pain, physical pain, any pain in general. So you should just either clear your head, talk to a friend, or even just look up for motivation. Look up motivation online or wherever. You can just, or even like in a library or bookstore, or even billboards sometimes, or clothing. You just have to make sure you stay motivated. This podcast is not telling you that sadness is bad and that your sadness is dumb. This podcast is saying that sadness is okay. Sadness and being down and depressed or things like that is definitely okay. It's never okay to hurt yourself or do anything that could possibly injure you, or that could possibly injure you severely because of a sadness, because you could mess up your plans, mess up your goal, but I'm not saying that you are in the wrong for doing that. Well, yes, I personally don't like, I'm not one to like that type of stuff. I know it's a thing that people have done. I am aware of that, but you should make sure you stay positive. Look for positivity. with a sadness, I've seen multiple people who are sad. Mainly their sadness is coming from them listening to negativity from other people, maybe sometimes their family, but a lot of times it's them focusing on the negativity around them rather than looking at the positivity, which a lot of people need to look at both perspectives. A lot more people, a lot of the human race looks at the negative. A lot of the human race sees a lot of the negativity because a lot of the human race it is like that. I've seen myself aware of negativity and focus on negative aspects. But my father, he's even like pointed out the positive things I've done, but he's also talked to me about how a lot more people just talk about negative. He gave me the example of a waiter at a restaurant. So he was saying that if a waiter did a horrible job, like if you were in a rush and a waiter was taking forever and the food was cold and everything was bad, you would tell the manager, like you would try to call the manager and you would be upset. But if they did a good job, this is still with the concept of a person being in a rush. But if the staff did a good job, everything was perfect and phenomenal, a lot more people wouldn't call the manager and say, hey, my waiter did this, and this, and it was perfect. But a lot more people would be calling the manager and being like, hey, this guy did this, and it was horrible and they would be mad. So you have to make sure you focus on both, more so focus towards positivity rather than negativity, because a lot more positivity is better as a lifestyle, as like anything goes on. Positivity is a great aspect to look at, great aspect to see it and notice and realize, but also pay notice to, like acknowledge positivity, acknowledge the good things. And with these elections, I'm still going to talk about the elections as this is after the elections, but you saw how they were attacking each other on the negative things they did, rather than saying, but maybe the opposing side did something great. But with the ads and like commercials, all they did was talk about the negative things they've done. Both sides did this. I'm not gonna say either side did one worse than the other. Both of them did the same thing, and every single politician does it. So that's it for this segment. We will go on to humility and kindness next. Alright, we are now on to the last and third and final segment of this episode, which is humility and kindness. These two go hand in hand, because with humility, you're being humble, you're not gloating, but just because you're not like gloating about your greatness or about or about how amazing you are, or something about that, or about your ownings and money, because money is also an act of humility. Like if you don't show off if you have a lot of money and you don't show off, that's somewhat an aspect of being humble. But if you act like you own a lot of money but you don't look like you have a lot of money, that's different. But if you do own a lot of money, you don't look like you own a lot of money, but you act like you have a lot of money, that's not being humble, that's just looking like you don't use a lot of your money. But being kind, you have to be kind and humble at the same time. Even so, if somebody points out your kindness, you don't have to say, "Oh yes, I am. I'm great. I'm super sweet." No, you say, "No, I'm really not. I'm just." Even if you know you're kind, you don't want to say, "Yes, I'm super kind," because at that point you're not being humble about your kindness, and you're really just trying to be kind for a reward or acknowledgement. With kindness, you do it out of your heart. You do it just because you want to, not because you want a reward. You do it not because you're asked to, but because you want to. You do kindness because it's what you should do. With kindness, I'm trying to say, with kindness, you should just try to stay humble. You should be kind and just offer help when you see somebody might need it. If somebody if somebody says no to you offering help, that does not mean you just pester them in order for you to help them. It means you just keep the offer there, but don't pester them. Just don't pester somebody into letting you help. With humility, you're being humble. With kindness, you're helping uh, you're helping or boosting somebody up just because you want to, not because you have to. With humility, you could be called out on you being great, but you're not admitting to it, or you're saying you're not. But there's always that small aspect of you not being humble. Like, you should always be able to say yes, that you should always be able to agree when somebody says that you are great or amazing. But you should also be able to say somebody's better because somebody's always better than you. It's not always the case, but somebody is better than you. In most cases, somebody's better. And that's what motivation is for. You motivate yourself in order to get to a higher point than somebody who could be better than you. You motivate yourself to a higher point than somebody that could be better than you. I'm going to reference an anime or Japanese animation show called Naruto. In one of the episodes, I can't remember the number or the title of the episode. Naruto sees that his partners in training are ahead of him and are better than him, but he doesn't stop training. He doesn't stop working. He works until he can get higher and higher and higher, because it's mainly running up a tree, but it's not climbing the tree, it's running flat feet on the tree. So he keeps working sleeplessly. Sometimes he's worked until the mornings for the show, and he's worked until he's gotten better than his partners, his training partners, mates, whatever you desire to call them. But my thing is, he worked as hard as he possibly could, even though he saw that there were his partners were better than him. He still worked harder and harder. And even though he messes up sometimes, he still gets back on his feet and he notices his mess up. He notes it down. Where he asks for help from his training mates. So it's never a bad thing to ask for help. Some of us like to we think of asking for help as like ruining our pride or being vulnerable. Some of us do that. I am a big advocate of doing it, and I've tried to like minimize it. Sometimes I don't. Sometimes I have that same thought, but it's always good to ask for help. Don't just sit around being in trouble or struggling or being confused. If there's somebody available to help you with something, ask for the help, even if you don't want it. And that is it for this episode. Thank you for listening. I will catch you on the next episode of Highly Motivated.